Is this going to be your grand opening event?
Not necessarily a grand opening event. It's just kind of like a event that I will be able to like market, advertise, and invite people from all the people that kind of been wanting to come down and kind of wanting to be a part of my facility and my location and kind of meet me, give them an opportunity to do that in a more of a structured setting. Yeah.
Mr. Mayor?
Derek, when exactly is this event planned for date-wise?
June 5th.
Okay. Because if you have a huge turnout, the folks aren't going to be able to fit in your facility.
Yeah,
Or do
and
you
I
expect to?
have
Or do you expect
I have
to
communications
overflow?
with hotels and
Well, where's it going to take place exactly?
and that's why I have like an itinerary set up too. Like I was gonna show you like pretty much itinerary set up. And I was gonna have like that field right across from where I'm at. I know you know where I'm at.
The
So
Harbor
I
View site.
had all that kind of set up for showing all the people that would come, the infinity movements, and it'd be on a time schedule. It wouldn't be like I was trying to cram everybody in there at one time. So it would be more of like a fluid day.
Okay. The reason I'm asking is you need to coordinate with the city too,
Okay.
because that would be a special event.
Okay.
And so we need to coordinate with our Parks and Recs department and the police.
Okay, so is there any other questions from our board here? Okay, we're looking for a motion now on this item.
Do you have
Some-
public comment?
Oh, no, I didn't. I omitted that. Is there any public comment on this request? Okay. So then, okay, you can sit, Derek. We're going to discuss it amongst ourselves now. Okay, so now let's see, is there anyone who wants to make a motion regarding this budget request?
I'll make a motion. I move we pay half the $4,300 and the full sign. That comes out to $3,350, based on the city allowing him to use the land across from the water's edge, and that all the legal rudiments are in.
Okay. Does anyone second that motion?
Didn't he have a prepared budget or something that we could look at, or some sort of plan?
I have not seen one.
We have not received that documentation in advance
I would like to see that.
and the way that we've, crafted this recommendation is that that would be provided before grant agreement would be executed, right, based on these outcomes, and things that the DDB we would only reimburse eligible expenses, right, as it's said here. So what you all would be voting on today is the funding request form and what's in the staff report, which would be 2 quotes, fabrication and installation of signage, of which we would do the lower quote, a letter from the landlord stating that the tenant can install that signage, and of course they have to have the permits, and then a description and budget for a program and event that's open to the public, tied to what he put in the funding request about this, health and fitness and what's been described. So that's what we would be, looking for. If we got a budget back that was $4,000 for pizza, we're going to be coming back to you guys, right? You might feel comfortable with that approach. You might not. That's what we'll wait to hear. Anything that happens on public land or in the street has to go through the special event permit process. Currently, the county has a cap on the number of people that can be gathered at once. So there's numerous rules and other check boxes that have to be checked for, this larger event, for street closure, for all those kind of things. But he could also take this through the Amplify program that we have set up. And Amplify can help him navigate the special event permit process and get that going. And he, that's exactly why we have that partnership in place between the CRA, DDB, and Amplify, is for business owners like Mr. Williams who don't run special events in the city of Clearwater all the time. So I feel comfortable with that. You guys let us know, if you all would please let us know where you're at. I think the amount of money is reasonable for what could happen. Again, if it's asking for $4,000 for pizza, we will be back here. It's gotta be tied to what is put in the funding request form.
Okay. I think there are enough obstacles for a new business owner to overcome to reach the point of becoming successful and putting on an event. So if we had to line them all up in a row, I hesitate being the one that throws a roadblock there before. There's many other roadblocks that have to be overcome before we have a success. So I'm inclined to have something occur, to put some funding in place, and if he then fills in all the other pieces, the event can go forward. But at least it'll be a positive step that he knows he has some funding secured and can proceed. So with that, we had a motion. We're waiting for a second for that motion, if there is a second. Do we have? Okay, Terry seconds that motion. Okay, now it's open for discussion. So,
First, would you repeat the motion, because it's been a while?
right,
We pay half of his 4,300, and all of his sign, I think, would come out to $3,350. Based on he gets all the permits and everything works out.
did the math work
Properly.
out there?
No, I'm still.
I did that in my head, so maybe it's off,
How did you get that math, just so as it
Well,
was?
2,150 is half, and then 1,200, so it's 3,350.
That's right. Okay, so that's what we have. So is there any discussion on this? Keenan?
A question for Amanda. With the CRA, you said they could be involved with the city process. Would that include potential funding to make up the difference if it was needed?
No, this is we have a program for 10 events with Amplify Clearwater that the CRA is already paying Amplify Clearwater to help applicants like this go through the special events process. The city has already agreed to co-sponsor these 10 special events. So if the event requires police and fire, those costs are already given in kind. And then the DDB, again, if it's part of this process, has said you'll spend $1,000 towards marketing, and there's a sliding scale depending on the size of the event for these 10 events. So, but that's still an if. I don't know if he'll go through that process or not. But the CRA doesn't have a mechanism for just giving $1,000 to a random event.
Then with that, I've done a lot of events, and if I haven't had the funds, they normally don't go well. So I'm thinking Mr. Williams presented a number based on what he needs to pull off the event. So I don't know that,
That's 100% of what he needs.
but you're talking about half of what he needs.
Half of the 43, all of the sign, so it comes out to,
But it's half of what he's asking on the,
For the
right,
event?
we never
Yes,
fund
that's
100%.
correct.
I'm just putting that out there. I don't know that, we'd be cutting the legs off of the event possibly.
We never fund 100% though.
Okay.
do we?
Well, I mean, I hear both sides.
You have to have skin in the
Let's-
game.
Yeah, that's a point. And
I mean,
go ahead, Caitlin.
my inclination would be, since the amount we're talking about, 2,500, is a pretty reasonable amount in the scheme of our budget, that I'd be inclined to fund it fully.
Okay, that's not the motion that we're under at the moment, but it's part of the discussion. Okay, is there more
You can always give
discussion?
more if it works, everything comes out all right.
Now, I believe, and somebody can correct me on my procedure here, maybe Elise, if someone.
Do you want me up here, or?
Yes, I think it would be best. We're still learning.
You have a motion on the table.
Right, now we're thinking,
Unless it's withdrawn, then you need to vote on it, and if it doesn't get passed, then you ask for another motion.
okay, now, is there a provision in the rules?
Pardon?
Is there a provision in the rules when there is a motion on the table for it to be amended to a different amount, or do we have to just vote on this amount?
It can be amended if both the person who makes the motion and the person who did the second agree.
Okay, so did you want to ask for an amendment from,
I could certainly move. I had just planned on voting against it and then moving for full, just to
Oh.
see if it passed or not, but.
Okay, we can do it that way as well. Okay, so why don't you
Okay.
stay there for a moment?
So
Okay, so go ahead.
I didn't hear what happened.
We could either, I mean, just procedurally, either we could go to a full vote, see if it passes half, and then if it does, it does. If it
It's
doesn't-
probably easier to do that, the full vote, and,
And then if not, then I can,
Okay.
yeah.
that's why I included my discussion, that would be my explanation of what my intent would be.
Very good. And is there any further discussion on this point? Okay, then we will call for a vote. All in favor? Okay. There, I'll vote with you just for once.
Make me feel better.
Okay. And opposed? There are 3 opposed. The motion fails. So now we will entertain a new motion.
Mr. Chair, I would like to approve Mr. Infinity's requested funding at the full amount of $5,500.
Second.
And we have okay, Caitlin makes the motion, and it is seconded by Keenan, and it is now open for discussion.
It's just 100%, you know.
But that will be provided he gets the permits and gets the meeting approval. So
There's the necessary protocol as well as its reimbursement.
Okay, I'm in agreement.
All right. Okay, I believe, I'm not sure that it's setting precedent. I don't know that this is the first time we've ever done this, but we have been reluctant to fully fund things in the past. So we have to be careful of that, because to be fair to the next time somebody comes and
Right.
asks us,
Someone else will want 100%.
yeah, so there is that consideration. Okay, so any other discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. It passes unanimously. Congratulations, Mr. Williams.
Thank you all.
I would just advise you to work very closely with the CRA staff to make sure that it's all organized properly and the paperwork is there and the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed so that it can all be paid out. Okay? Thank you. Let's move on. Okay, now we're on to item 4.2, and this is a discussion on guidelines for future funding requests. I'm going to preface this by saying that in the next 2 months, in May and June, we will not be entertaining any new budget requests. So it'll be July before anyone can come to us and ask us for more funding. So having said that, who is conducting the presentation on this?
I am.
Very good.
Okay.
Amanda, take the helm.
Yes, and I'm actually gonna stay seated here. I don't think it's, not because I'm pregnant, but because this is the screen that it's on.
Okay.
But the purpose of this discussion, and actually you had a nice transition into it, is to receive further direction from you all on how you would like to consider and fund external requests for funding. We've, for the past 2 years, we've updated our ordinance, we've updated our funding policies and other financial policies, we've revamped the funding request process, and we've done all of that, and really that new process took place last year, really in the middle of the pandemic, where we had new forms, new reporting requirements, we switched to a rolling basis. You have an updated work plan, then you have 3 categories attached to your work plan. So if people knew they were coming in for a special event, or if they're coming in for marketing, or if they're coming in for signage, whatever that may be. The old process, as you know, was not well advertised. You pretty much heard from people once a year, and it was almost 100% just special events, and really the same special events over and over. And so what we heard from you, right, through our kind of planning process is we'd like to be able to expand what we can do as a board and who we're attracting and the kinds of requests that we can consider. So the 3 categories that you have established now, the goals, a marketing goal is increased awareness of downtown as a fun destination for Clearwater residents, employees, and visitors. And business assistance, retain current businesses and attract new businesses. Policy and project, creating a more welcoming downtown. An example of that is our equity committee and that work. So right now, when someone comes to us and they say, hey, we'd like to receive funding from the DDB, the first thing the CRA staff does is we say, how are you fitting into one of these 3 buckets? And to give you a for example, We had a funding request come in where someone said, hey, we have a rental unit in downtown and we'd really like you to pay for renovations of it so it'll be perform better on Airbnb. You'll never see that funding request. We will gatekeep that funding request because it's not part of your, even if they're throwing fun parties there, that's not part of your plan, right? Your adopted work plan. And then the grant agreement, which you didn't really have before. The process before, they filled out a special event form, they'd come back and they'd give a verbal report and said, hey, 500 people attended, we sold 60 tickets, and have a great day, right? Now you have stricter reporting requirements. We have a separate agreement, right, for the funding that gets signed, and it has a payment schedule, and all those things are just much more outlined, right, with a lot more clarity. And you establish a budget amount. You can amend that budget amount at any time, but you have a bucket, so if someone says, you know, is $5,500 a reasonable request or not? Well, if you only have $3,000 in that category, no, it's not. If you have $100,000, yes, it is. So that's where we're at today. And as we send out that infographic, you know, that Rosemary showed a couple months ago, that one pager that says, here's the DDB, we're gonna be mailing all of you again, and we have this new funding request process, we anticipate we will get more funding requests, right? So what you've seen tonight in the meeting before, we should have more people who want to be involved and who want to be investing in their properties and in the community. So with that in mind, I've outlined some discussion items here. These are not to be answered tonight, because as you said, we have long other things to talk about. But I want to at least make sure in the next month, if there's questions that you want help and background and want to talk about, we get these added to the list. Or if there's things that you immediately as a group are like, we don't need to consider A, B, or C, that we get that captured tonight, so that over the next 2 months, we can continue this conversation, we can update our forms and policies as needed, so that you'll be able to adopt amendments in July and be back open in the funding business again. So you see them here, you have, do we need to modify the current work plan? Are you still good with it? You know, that's attached. Usually we look at it around budget time, which is the August-September timeframe. Do you want to adopt minimum and maximum grant funding amounts? Should you require matching after a certain level? Do you want to incorporate diversity and equity considerations into your funding process as you're thinking about that kind of work? Are you comfortable with the current funding policy, which was also attached? And are there types of activities or projects that you do not want to fund, that we can communicate clearly? We do not care about Ferris wheels. Not doing it, right? Whatever that example may be. Yeah.
Okay. Did anyone have a comment or a question? I have, the thing that occurs to me is that we need to, because we were faced with this, as we were just a few minutes ago, we need some guidance or some rules that we should have to guide us when we consider grants that are predetermined and not under the pressure of having the requester in front of us. It'd be better if we had a policy set out in advance, where we said, if it's, for example, I'm not sure that this is what the policy should be, but just as an example, if somebody's requesting something for themselves, that would be a different type of criteria than if somebody is a volunteer representing some organization that's putting something on for the broader, for the downtown area. So like if somebody came in and said, I want to, upgrade my blah, I'm reluctant to say that we should pay 100% of it. And I think that we should have some kind of percentage or where they have something involved. Now, if somebody else is volunteering and providing dozens of hours of work to create something that's an event that many people will benefit from, then I don't think that they should have to fork out money out of their own pocket for that effort. So I'd be more inclined to go 100% with that type of effort. But it would be good to see some rules presented to us for our consideration.
Okay.
Anything else along that line, or anything occur to anyone to help?
So 2 thoughts. I think that what those policies or what those thought processes are probably going to change year to year as board dynamics change, as you guys have elections, because we'll have some boards that we're looking over the years that are very pro-events. We want throw all of our money at events because we think events are a great thing for downtown, and you'll have other boards that are, no, we don't want events, we want marketing. That, it may be good to foresee that this is something that's going to be evaluated with the new board in a work plan or otherwise regularly, because you may have policies that applied with one mentality and then don't apply 2 years later with a new board makeup. The only other thing I'll say to the kind of question posed that Amanda posed is, I think we want to look at it with a lens of equity and diversity and making sure that that our policies and procedures, something that as the equity committee continues to move forward, and we'll have proposals and things like that, but we want to have that lens when we're coming up with these policies as well. So there's a couple of thoughts in terms of how to do that, and we're continuing to brainstorm.
Very good. Terry, did you have something?
No, I like those points on equity and diversity, but I also like the point of matching, because I think that, as was earlier brought up, it puts skin in the game, so that it's more motivational, I think, to get something all the way through to it done.
Very good. Any other input from anyone? Now, from us, now that you've given us that presentation, this is something you want us to come back to you over the next period of time, or is this our opportunity here?
No, so this will be at your next meeting. We'll move forward with preparing some background material and some recommendations for you guys to respond to and react to at your next meeting. So you could say, yes, you heard us, or change this, or no. So something more concrete that you can respond to.
Okay, very good. Any other comments, Caitlin?
Could I have clarity in terms of, like, if I'm a grant applicant, what is the process I go through in terms of getting this information? Because I know we have the funding policy, and I just pulled on our website just to kind of see, like, how do they get that information? I know the request form is on there and there's an explanation there, but what does it look like from the user's perspective?
So from a user's perspective, you would fill out the funding request form, and you'd meet with CRA staff, and we would help you get it to as complete form as we could, let you know where you are in the timeline of being able to be heard. Then we take that, we email it out to you. You guys have 7 days to say, I need to know more about this, or I'd like more information on that, or don't respond at all. And then we turn around and communicate that back to the applicant, where it's, we really need a more detailed budget. We're gonna be asked these 4 questions that we need to, either this is the kind of thing we need to have in advance at the meeting, or this is the kind of thing that you could answer at the meeting. We then use that to prepare the staff report, right, and attach the funding request. And so then our recommendation is in that staff report to you. Once it goes through your process, then we use that to create the grant agreement.
Okay. Just as an additional thing that I think should be in there, would be that when a grant request comes in, it should not be presented to us until there is an actual detailed budget that shows exactly what's being spent. Like, I wouldn't, in the new rules, what we just approved wouldn't have been approved.
Sure, and we'll outline what that could look like, and what you're gonna bump up against is some details might not have been figured out yet, right? So do you wanna be an early funder, or do you wanna be the last funder? It might be volunteer run, so they might need more help in putting together that information, or it might be, the Super Boat parade.
Right.
So we will certainly give you kind of, here's a recommendation, and here's the impacts that actually has on who will end up asking for money and what they'll be able to provide.
Yeah, just that we should have enough information to make a decision based on, some due diligence.
Right, and I definitely hear that, and everyone has a different need for a different level of information.
Very good.
Yeah.
Okay, so can we leave that? Are we done? Very good.
Okay,
Let's
thank
move
you.
on to item 4.3. I'd like to ask Elise to take this one.
I'm going to start out with just a little bit of background first. I was on this board in the early 90s and chaired this board for a few years in the early 90s. So I'm fairly familiar and started representing this board shortly after I left it. So I'm really familiar with your procedures and your history. There is nothing in your procedures. What we're asking you to do today is look at the ex officio members. There is nothing at law that requires the city to appoint ex officio members. And there's nothing at law that requires you to accept ex officio members. They serve an important purpose, providing communication between you, the CRA, and the DDB. How did we get ex officio members? Well, it actually started 3 years before I got involved, so I can only tell you through the paperwork. According to the minutes of the August 8th, 1987 council meeting, and I'm going to periodically say commissioners because that's what they were called back then, so I know it's been changed, but according to the minutes of the August 8th, 1987 council meeting, there was a prior joint meeting of the council and the DDB. And recognizing that our goals are very similar to their goals as far as downtown is concerned, the DDB requested that there be non-voting representation from the city commission on the DDB board and non-voting representation from the DDB on the CRA. Okay? The minutes of the 87 meeting of the council says that it was agreed that 2 members of the DDB would be appointed as non-voting members of the CRA, and at least 1 commissioner would be appointed as non-voting member of the DDB. At that meeting, 2 DDB members designated by the DDB were approved by the commission to sit as non-voting members on the CRA, and the commission then appointed 2 members of the commission to sit on the DDB board as non-voting members. We don't know why they picked 2 instead of 1. There's nothing in there that indicates why. No reason why they should, but they did pick 2. I don't know when the practice of having 2 members of the DDB on the CRA as non-voting members on the CRA stopped. I don't know who requested that it stop. I don't have those records, and it didn't seem like something you all would want to pay me to research because it's not particularly relevant here. I can only assume, as a practical matter, that they decided, since the commission also sits as the CRA, having a commission appointee here who is also on both other boards, you've got your communication. Because one would assume that, unlike at my age, he doesn't walk through a door and forget everything, or he takes notes. But, you know, it's one would assume that that communication could be handled by the person who attends all 3 meetings. During my term on the board, and I think for pretty consistently thereafter, there have been 2 appointed. The purpose of the ex officio members, and that's pretty clear in the minutes from the 87 meeting, is, well, it was recognized that revitalization of downtown is important to all 3 boards, okay? They share a common purpose. They do not share, they do not have equal powers, and they do not have equal responsibilities, but there's overlap. And if they're working at cross purposes, it's not going to be good for downtown. So communication was key in order to make sure that the boards are working together, to make sure that they're not undoing what the other did or duplicating efforts. So it is clear in the minutes that the purpose of these cross members was communication, improving communication. The appointees are not there as individuals. The appointees are there as representatives. They are not there was nothing in there that said, you need other people there to help you make decisions on either side. In fact, I think at that time, the commission would have blown a gasket if we had told them they needed our help on the CRA, and I'm fairly sure we would have blown a gasket for the same reason. These members are there to participate in their representative capacity. The problem, and it has been true since I was on the board, is that if you have two appointees, one of them doesn't have much to do. Because, quite frankly, after the mayor makes his report about what the CRA and the city is doing, there's not much left in a representative capacity for Mr. Bunker to say. So, and this has been a problem since day one. And like I said, I've searched to find out a rationale for the two, and I couldn't find it. I've talked to people who were around back then. There aren't many of us. They don't know where it was. So when I was on the board, I always felt like we were wasting one commissioner's time because the other one could have handled it. One of the arguments I've heard is, well, what if that commissioner can't show up? We don't have the communication problems that we used to have. We're staffed by the CRA's staff. Communication flows quite easily between the two groups. Amanda doesn't take off her DDB hat and say, I'm not going to talk about any of that when she's talking to the CRA people. You know, we have the same staff, so the communication is there regardless. So if a meeting has to be missed or a designated member can't attend, either a substitute or rely on staff. It's not an issue. To make sure that I was being fair and not making, not just playing personalities here, I went back through the minute. I had Sandy go back through the minutes and do a summary for me. And through no fault of his own, Mr. Bunker has made a maximum of 2 comments in his representative capacity. Not because he's being lax, but because it's already been said. So there really is, and so most of the comments have been in a personal capacity, which is not what this position is for. And having 2 members, no matter who they are, puts the second member in that position. And that's why we've requested that this resolution be entered. And did you want me to read it, or is there a copy that's available to the public?
I believe if we just read out just the title, like the heading.
Pardon?
of it. If we just read out the first paragraph.
Okay. Resolution of the Clearwater Downtown Development Board of the City of Clearwater, Florida, requesting that the Clearwater City Council appoint 1 council member to serve as a non-voting member of the Clearwater Downtown Development Board, providing an effective date of this resolution.
Very good. Now, are there any questions from the board?
I have some questions. You said you went back to 12 months since Mr. Bunker was on the DDB board here. Going back 3-4 years, have we had more comments from other ex-officio members? Have they ever expressed a situation where they felt they had nothing to say and their time's been wasted? Because I feel if they volunteered their time to be here, we shouldn't take it lightly, So have you ever had any situations where they go, oh, I don't want to be here because I don't have anything to say?
We have actually, back when I was on the board, there was some discussion as to whether we really needed to, but it didn't come to a head. I can't tell you whether I don't believe you all have discussed it, but if you look back at your minutes, I suspect you're going to find the same thing is true, that one person can handle it. So I don't know why we have to.
Yes, maybe Mr. Bunker might not say certain things might not say much, but the next person who fills his seat might say more. So I don't think, based on you feel on one person's performance, should we feel we have to get rid of the second position? Because I don't see why we have to do that. It does no harm. It does for him to be here or for have 2 ex-officio members. they're not being paid to be here, particularly, so why do we get rid of it? I mean, if they haven't complained about being here. So that's what I don't understand, you know, so.
I will have a question.
Caitlin?
I don't know if you have an answer or you're responding to that, so I didn't want to be rude.
Truly, it is a matter of why are we asking the commission to appoint 2 members?
2 points of view.
They have a few other things they can be doing. And why are we creating a situation where we have a mute member or a member who feels it's necessary to just bring in personal opinion, which is what has happened here, or personal comments rather than representative comments?
Yeah, maybe personal, but the next person that feels the shoes there might not do that. So we shouldn't just make a decision on that, you know. And
What
that's
do you see as the advantage of having 2 members?
What's the disadvantage?
Pardon?
What's your disadvantage?
I'm asking, what is the advantage of having 2
I'm
members?
asking what your disadvantage is.
The disadvantage, you have one person who has no real purpose.
And I'm asking, going back 2-3 years, has that been the case?
Yeah, I believe that has been the case, that having 2 members serves no real purpose.
And have they expressed that same idea that they don't want to be here because they have nothing to say? I mean,
I haven't asked.
okay, maybe we should.
Okay.
I had 1 or 2 questions, but after hearing this, I have many more. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Go ahead.
So the one question I had is theoretically what would happen is if this were to be approved, it would go to city council and then they would just pick who, because we keep referring to like Mr. Bunker's spot.
I'm sorry,
Sure, we keep referring to Mr. Bunker's spot, but the process would be it would go back to city council would decide who to appoint in that position. So we don't know who would serve in the sole position.
that is correct. The council has, if we ask them to appoint one and they agree to appoint one, that is their choice. They're not required to appoint one, they're not required to appoint 2. But if they agree to appoint one, it is their choice who they pick.
Just want to make sure.
We make all of our choices in April for all of the boards that all the council members serve on. Countywide, the DDB, all of those are done in our April meeting, normally after an election. But it's every year annually. Many times people are renewed, just so you know what the process is and when.
And that affected the timing of this motion, because we knew the process was beginning.
Thank you.
Yes. Well, first I was surprised that you mentioned, because I thought you were going to offer me to be the sole person as an ex-officio.
It's not our
member.
choice.
Not your choice, right. But you assumed that the mayor would stay on and Mr. Bunker would be booted off.
No,
So I'm wondering
what I
if
was
this
saying-
was.
That is not what I was saying. What I was saying, as it currently stands, the mayor makes his report because he is the senior member, and then you are left with nothing to say. But I was making no assumption as to who the city would appoint.
So if the city council decided, yes, we want Mr. Bunker to be the sole ex-officio member and not the mayor, you would be happy with that?
It is not my decision.
Well, whose idea was this? Was this your idea to suddenly drop down to 1, or was it the board's idea? Did they come to you, or did you suggest it to them?
Actually, it was a discussion between staff and me.
Staff and you?
Yes.
No members of the board?
And I discussed it with the chair because the chair has to put it on the agenda.
Okay. But, just for sunshine laws, there was no
No, there was no
input.
discussion with any, well, actually, I'm allowed to discuss it with every single person on the board.
Sure.
As long as I don't tell them who else I've discussed it with.
Did you, or did you
No,
just?
I did not.
Okay. So did Paris bring it to you, or did you bring it to Paris?
I brought it to him.
Okay. Did Paris suggest that you search ways to get rid of Mr. Bunker?
No, because quite frankly, if that were the sole goal, we could just not accept ex officio members.
But I find it curious that since 1987, and through all the years that you served on the board, until now, you never had a problem with 2 ex officio members, but now you do. And Mr. Bunker, we're wasting his time. Let him go. You say I made only 2 comments, well, I don't think that's exactly true.
Two
But
representative comments.
one thing I did do is very strongly support the Downtown Clearwater Merchants Association when they came to ask for their big ask. And the point I made when I supported them, which you were against, was that since 1987, through all the years you were on the board and all the years after, downtown was dead. The district came along from the CMA, and they brought life to downtown. And I said they deserve the money because they're doing the work. They're getting results. And I backed them, and they called me their champion when I saw them outside.
Mr. Bunker, you just proved my point. You are not talking as a representative of the city you are talking about you. You are talking about your opinion. You didn't say the commission believes, and you didn't say that the CRA believes. That was you, and that is not what this petition entails. That would be more appropriate on citizens' comments. It is not a representative comment.
But you have to admit, it was a comment that had some weight to it, that actually got the rest of the board to say, all right, let's do that. And that has been a success.
I admit no such thing. I believe the board was going to prove it regardless.
All right. Well, it's not an insubstantial thing that I contributed on that day.
I never said insubstantial. I said personal rather than representative.
All right. So why are there any ex-officio members? Why do we need any?
I don't believe at this point that we do when we're sharing staff, but I do believe that in the event that we stop sharing staff, it's good to have the system in place. But that's my personal opinion, not the board's opinion.
All right. Early on, when Mayor Hibbert got reelected and I joined the city council, Mayor Hibbert made a point at one of the city council meetings that he didn't know if there was a reason for this board to exist at all, because it was duplicative and there could be a better way to handle this. So if during the discussion that we have during the city council meeting, if that's brought up as an option, well, let's just disband the downtown development board. Is that an acceptable solution?
It's easier said than done. We're an independent taxing district.
Just checking.
Just checking. Okay.
Okay, let's keep to the resolution that we're discussing and not other matters. Okay.
Okay.
So any other board members have any input on this? Okay.
Citizen comments.
Are there any citizen comments on this question? All right, so we have a resolution that's been read out. I'd like to request a motion to adopt this resolution number 2102.
Yeah, I move the DDB requests that the city of Clearwater City Council appoint one council member to serve as ex officio non-voting member of the DDB at the next available meeting.
Very good. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Keenan seconds. Okay, is there any discussion? Anyone want to say anything? Okay. Yes, you may say something.
Sure. I have been prevented from saying the word Scientology since you last passed one of these resolutions. But I think it's
Mr. Bunker,
important to
Mr.
have it
Bunker,
on the
let me-
record that
let me
really
stop
this is
you right
about
there. Mr. Bunker,
Scientology.
you're out of order. We're talking about the resolution before us. We're not talking about Scientology. Restrict your comments to the issue we're discussing.
That's the subtext.
Okay, so
It's
so
a
that's
subterfuge.
there's a resolution before us. You can either keep your comments to it or don't make any. Okay, so
I'd like to just make,
Caitlin?
it's more of an inquiry, but one thing that I know we've always kind of wanted to maintain, certainly more recently since I've been involved as well, is a good working relationship with city council, and I'd be curious if there would be any appearance going from 2 to 1 is that creating an issue in terms of the relationship between DDB and city council? And I'd be interested if the mayor, if you have any kind of optic issues with that, or no, the answer would be no.
Well, I think there's going to obviously be optics now, because there's going to be questions about motivation. But it will be a discussion that we'll have amongst ourselves and make a determination as to what we think is best for both the city and the DDB. And we'll either accept your resolution or we won't. So,
That's all we can ask.
yep.
Okay. Any other discussion? Okay, I'm going to call it for a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
And opposed? Okay. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 versus 1. Okay, now we're going to move on. Old business, 5.3, Downtown Summit update. Keenan?
It'll be brief. I want to thank Rosemary in particular and Amanda for help guiding me through the process of organizing a public meeting. I'm used to just saying, let's have a meeting, and that's not how it works. So thank you, first of all, for helping me with that. And so then the basic update, I think there's an attachment there. We've cultivated a little bit of an agenda for a phone call that'll happen in the next week or two. And then after that, we have the agenda, proposed agenda for the summit. And I'm definitely open to, this is kind of just culled from our feedback, and so this will be going out to the different group representatives, and then we'll be getting feedback from them. And if you guys have any feedback, feel free to email it to me. I'll add it to the agenda with the purpose, of course, of harmonizing the Amplify DDB CRA and, of course, the district, DCMA. So that's the presentation. I haven't had the meeting yet. Sorry.
Okay. Comments for anyone? Questions? Okay. There appear not to be any questions. Are there any citizen comments on this issue? Okay. Do we need a motion at this point on anything?
I don't think so.
Okay. So we'll go on to the next item. Item 5.4, the Equity Committee update. Caitlin?
Sure. So, with the wonderful help of Rosemary, we have scheduled a whole flurry of meetings with different organizations and folks at different organizations in the community with the goal of gathering information, gathering ideas, as well as providing information in terms of, hey, the DDB's here, we'd like to help, here's, and maybe introducing them to the idea that we're an institutional funder and maybe able to partner with them in terms of going through the funding request process. So we're in the middle of that. We've had a lot of really good ideas. One of the things that going forward, we'll probably suggest is having a presentation from an individual to kind of give a little bit, almost like a boot camp, equity boot camp. Here's what we're talking about. Here's not only the language and vocabulary we're using, but also here's some considerations to have in terms of looking internally. Because I think initially when this committee was created, we were looking externally, especially with everything that was going on at that very time. Well, I should say everything that was publicized at that very time, not that it's never not going on. But we're also looking internally, and I think keeping the lens of equity when we're talking about policies for funding requests in that whole procedure. Whenever we're doing anything on the call, remembering that these are things, remembering the equity lens and trying to kind of keep that moving forward is something to keep in the back of our minds. But we will, May, probably June, try to have someone come in and give a bit of a presentation and continue this discussion and give this background, as well as talk about ideas for what we can do. But we'll have more definitive, hopefully, projects and partnerships, especially when we start having more events actually occur. So, been busy.
Thank you. Are there any questions from the board on this? Any input at all? Okay. Well, thank you. Let's move on to the 5.5 CRA update. Amanda?
Yes, so just to let you know that moving forward for the next 3 months, Assistant City Manager Michael Delk will be the interim CRA director. If you have not scheduled your call with Bandwagon, do it. This is your chance. They are doing, a deep dive into our brand and marketing messages and all of that. So this is your chance to have the one-on-one time with them to share your perspective on downtown. And this is a project that we're, keeping moving forward. So please, 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 please click on the link, the calendar link. Councilmember Albritton was going to appear tonight to ask for a support letter from the Downtown Development Board for PSTA's federal grant application for a multimodal center. So if you all are okay with it, I'll go ahead and draft something that the chair can sign off on, but this would be the site at Court in Myrtle. This has been a long time in the plans, so I see nodding heads, so you will.
What is it exactly?
So it is a multimodal center. It'll be mixed use, potentially rail, so that comes down, buses, and maybe, oh gosh, what's the
Driverless
name? They're bigger
buses.
than drones, but they're not helicopters.
Gondolas.
Pods?
Maybe the pods.
Aliens.
These are like very small planes. What do you?
No, it's a
I'll
new
send you-
technology,
It's a new technology, yes, exactly, but it's basically gonna be kind of like the car sharing of the sky.
Oh,
Maybe I'll trademark that.
No, they just fly.
Just-
Yeah.
they're like ospreys, the wings are fixed, but they switch from being
Airborne
a helicopter
driverless
to a
Uber.
plane.
And they hold
They
around.
only
like-
hold about 6 people.
Yeah.
But they're mostly silent and very mobile. We have 2 new grant programs the CRA trustees have adopted. They'll be considering a 3rd one on Monday that's for exterior and interior improvements to ground floor commercial properties. We're being, very aggressive in our approach to reducing vacancy and looking for property owners who want to partner to reduce vacancy and reduce blight. So you'll be hearing more about those, and I'll be sending those out. And finally, Rosemary DeMore will be leaving us to return to DC at some point this summer. Her job is posted now. So if you know anyone who is as amazing as she is, please have them submit their application. So that's it for us. I know others have other announcements.
Okay. Any board questions of Amanda regarding the CRA? And others have announcement? Does somebody else want to address this?
Oh, sorry, I meant for all of you.
Oh, okay. All right. Okay. So, chairman's report, I don't really have anything to add in this meeting. We've run fairly long already, so I'll keep my remarks to a minimum. Now we'll go on to board members to be heard and our final comments, beginning on my left.
I, again, like what I see in downtown, mainly because I'm downtown all the time. And it's getting fun. That new little restaurant's kind of neat that opened up, 530 Pub. Yeah, I tried their hamburger day, it was really good. So I'm happy with the progress that's happening downtown.
Festus.
Once again, I want to thank the city and staff for the efforts you guys put in here, and also the DCMA for the great job you do. I see it every day from where I live, and I thank you guys so much for it. Keep it going. I appreciate it.
Keenan?
I will second that. The charity night is fantastic, what they're doing downtown. It was a great idea. I promote it all the time, what Lena and Carolyn and Sheila and Scott and everybody have done. Brilliant.
Absolutely echo. I'll also thank CRA, specifically Rosemary, for all the help in terms of what we've been doing and are continuing to do.
Ditto, and thank you to the city staff, and goodbye to Rosemary. She's pretty awesome, and I hope we get somebody just as awesome as her.
Mr. Mayor?
I just give you a couple things real quick. The council's had a couple meetings, special work sessions on Imagine Clearwater. We've talked about the Conservancy. We're talking about putting a mission for the park together. We're talking about having an RFP, RFQ for an operator for the entertainment venue, so that's going to be forthcoming in the months to come. We think it's important to have an operator. It's not really in the wheelhouse of the city, and we want to get someone professional in there that can do that. We also want them on the front end, so they can help with the venue. Mr. Horn is authorized to keep Cleveland Street closed for the 400 and 500 block through the end of the year, at which point we will do a 6-month traffic study to see how it impacts the rest of downtown once we hopefully get back to normal, whatever that is. And then we also had a conference call with FDOT's consultant for Complete Streets, which is for Drew Street. And I'd recommend at some point that you get the presentation. There's 3 segments, so it runs all the way from Osceola out to 19 on Drew Street, and it's really trying to balance, first of all, making Drew safer, because the lanes are extraordinarily narrow in certain segments, but also still moving traffic. So it's a balancing act, but I think it's something that the DDB ought to be aware of, and I think it would be worthy of scheduling a short presentation for.
Amanda, did you take a note?
I got it.
Great, thank you.
I'm deeply touched by Elisa's concern about wasting my time. And there's as much sincerity in that comment as I believe there is in your excuse for creating this.
Okay, and my final comment is, I did participate in the bandwagon interview the other day, and I encourage my fellow board members to also participate in it. It's an opportunity to give your ideas and to be heard and possibly have a positive impact on where we go from here. And also I wish you well, Rosemary. Good luck in the future. And with that, at 6:56 in the evening, this meeting is adjourned.